Well, hey there, reader friends. I'm Erica, and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be doing my December 2017 wrap-up. 2017's over, guys. It's over. I had a really good December. I read 8 books. That's a lot for me. And I had a lot of 5-star reads. I also had my worst read of the year. December really had ups and downs and everything in between. The first book I finished in December was A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. I listened to the audiobook and then I reread some of the chapters because some of the chapters I just wanted to read again. I bet we can all guess which chapters those were. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, mainly because it's very hard, I think, for authors to continue in a series when one of the main events of the series has happened. They have to figure out a way to keep momentum. And I overall think Sarah J. Maas did a really good job. And part of that is because her world building is so interesting, at least to me, and because she had a lot of compelling side characters. I really am excited to see where she goes in this universe. I know she has another book coming out in spring that's in the, court world. And I, for one, am really interested because I found a lot of the side characters really compelling. And I want to know how it ends up for them. And I want them to get their happy endings. And I'm actually totally okay if she goes and does a side series, or I don't know what you call it. There's a word and I'm not remembering the word, guys. I didn't give it 5 stars for a couple of reasons. One, because I listened to the audiobook, it was really hard for me to keep characters straight. Who was with what court. That's more on me than the book itself, but I also feel that a lot of times, particularly in one chapter that was really long, there was just here's this character from this court, here's this character from this court, here's this character from this court, and this court, and this court, and this court, and it just kept going, and I was like, whoa, that's a lot of characters. How big is this table you're sitting around, guys? I felt that those characters could have been introduced more authentically, and that they didn't have to all be introduced at once. It just was a little forced for me. Another reason I didn't give it 5 stars was just because it didn't have enough Reese in it for me. I wanted more Reese and Feyre stuff. It just didn't have the same magic. It just didn't feel like 5 stars altogether. I debated a long time about whether I was going to give it 5 or 4 stars, and I just decided 4 stars because there were things that I wanted more of that were not there. The second book I read in December was George by Alex Gino, which I also gave 4 stars. I enjoyed the book so much. It was very eye-opening to me about the transgender experience, particularly for how kids experience being transgender. I want to say, this book deserves all the acclaim it gets, all the starred reviews it got, all the awards it won. It deserves that 100%. The reason I did not give it 5 stars was because Alex Gino's writing style did not appeal to me. I found it very dry and very repetitive and not a lot of variety in sentence structure, which for me gets tedious to read, and that's why it wasn't 5 stars. It really isn't a reflection on the book itself, it's more just on my personal reading taste when it comes to writing style. The third book I read in December was Pride and Prejudice and Mistletoe by Melissa de la Cruz. Whoa, what a disappointment. It was terrible. This book was awful. It was terrible. And I think part of the reason it was so terrible was because it's marketed as a Pride and Prejudice retelling, and that's just garbage. It doesn't deserve that. It doesn't deserve that at all. The characters were like middle schoolers. It read like a really bad first draft. I don't know where the editor was on that book. One of the reasons I was very frustrated was because the premise was so good. The premise for this story is that it's a Pride and Prejudice retelling told from Darcy's point of view, and it's gender bent, which has all kinds of potential for being a really interesting novel, a really interesting interpretation of Pride and Prejudice. And it was not realized at all. As I said earlier, it felt like a first draft. The characters were very underdeveloped and often very unlikable, and they spoke in ways that didn't reflect who they were. The other thing that really frustrated me was that the first couple of chapters were decent. They were okay. And then it got just bad. Bad. I have to say, if it hadn't been a Pride and Prejudice retelling, I probably wouldn't be so bitter and upset about it, but because they had the audacity to market like that, and basically lie to people and say it was a Pride and Prejudice retelling, when really it's not. The characters were not at all like the original characters in Pride and Prejudice. The language was nowhere near close to Austen's. The character development and the interpersonal relationships, and then the comedy of manners aspect, none of that was in this book at all. It's like Melissa de la Cruz read a Spark Notes version of Pride and Prejudice and wrote this book. I don't know what was going on. It was awful. I cannot recommend it unless you want to like learn how to write poorly. Now I feel like this is the part where I have to say the disclaimer of if you liked this book, that's perfectly okay. Please don't send me hate comments and every book their reader and all that stuff. I don't think I ever actually said that I gave Pride and Prejudice 1 star. If it was possible to give it 0 stars, that would have happened. But it's 1 star. Moving on. The 4th book I read in December was All's Fair in Middle School by Victoria Jamieson, which I gave 5 stars. It fulfilled all my dreams and expectations. It was wonderful. One thing I really like about Victoria Jamieson is she does a really good job of showing the middle school female experience, particularly when it comes to friendships, and how it's very difficult from like the ages of 12 to 15 sometimes to figure out who your friend group is, who your real friends are, and accept who you are in relationship to those friends, or all of that stuff. She does a great job of doing it, not only through her story and through her dialogue, but also her art. Her characters are extremely strong. The main characters in both her books that I've read, Roller Girl and this one, are fully realized and developed and real people. Cannot recommend this highly enough. Also, if you like Ren fairs and things like that, it was really fun for me. The 5th book I read in December was Aminas Voice by Hannah Khan, and I also gave it 5 stars. I really loved how Hannah Khan was able to create a book that, for me, was both a window and a mirror. There's this theory in librarianship that some books are mirrors, which means that you see yourself in them and that makes you feel accepted and it helps you feel like you're an okay person. And then other books are windows, which expose you to other points of views and ideas and therefore help you become more tolerant, more accepting, and more secure with yourself because it's okay that people are different than you. That's not a bad thing. And it's not something that has to be threatening to you or your personhood. So both are extremely important, and Amina's Voice did both of them. I really saw myself in her relationship with her friends, particularly my middle school self in her relationships with her friends, navigating who she wanted to be in relationship to her family members, navigating how she wanted to exist in a world that sometimes didn't approve of who she was. I really responded well to that myself. At the same time, it was definitely a window because I'm not Muslim, I'm not Pakistani, and there were aspects of the book that I didn't understand because it's not my culture. Those aren't aspects of my life, and that's okay. I also really enjoyed how the last quarter of the book really opened up a complex and authentic and at times heartbreaking discussion of intolerance and how you deal with random hateful acts of violence. I wondered throughout the book, because this book was published in 2017, if Hannah Khan was going to address hate crimes and things like that. And she waited, but she did, and she did it very well. It brought me to tears, but it also gave me a lot of hope. And I think that that's part of why this is such an important book. And I hope that it gets even more recognition. I hope that it gets awards. It's so good. It's so good. The 6th book I read in December was a picture book called Divorce is the Worst by Anastasia Higginbottom. Can we just take a moment to appreciate the author's name? Anastasia Higginbottom. It sounds like something from Harry Potter. I love it so much. This book is amazing because it discusses divorce from the point of view of a counselor or adult or someone who is older talking to a younger person and explaining divorce and how you may feel and how you may be experiencing the world and that that's okay. And then the illustrations show a young person who's genderless. You don't know if it's a boy or a girl, and who is also of ambiguous ethnicity, and shows that child going through that experience. The artwork is really compelling as well. It's collage style and it's in browns and kind of darker colors, I guess. I wouldn't say darker colors. I just think that it's not vibrant, it's not bright. It seems just kind of shaded and faded, reflecting how the kid's feeling. It does a great job also at providing an opportunity for kids to explore feelings and how divorce feels. I also think it's really important that we have these books available for all kinds of kids, because even as someone who doesn't come from a divorced household, it shows that experience. And like I said before, mirrors and windows, guys. Mirrors and windows. The 7th book I read in December was The Afterlife of Holly Chase, which was a book club pick, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I gave it 4 stars. I particularly really liked the ending because I didn't see it coming, and it's very rare for me to not see an ending coming, so that was refreshing and a nice way to kind of wrap up the year. The premise of The Afterlife of Holly Chase is that Holly Chase is a teen who is terrible and is visited by the 3 ghosts from A Christmas Carol and says, "Nope, I don't believe in you," and then she dies, and then she becomes the ghost of Christmas past and has to, like, save all these Scrooges, and then she falls in love with a Scrooge, and it goes from there. I particularly liked how Cynthia Hand, the author, used A Christmas Carol and the characters within A Christmas Carol and the premise of A Christmas Carol and put her own twist on it, but remained true to the feeling of Dickens' book. I really enjoyed that. It wasn't 5 stars because it didn't feel like 5 stars. Also, there were parts of it where I felt like it dragged a little bit. There were parts where I just was kind of struggling to get through it. So it wasn't necessarily a page turner, but it did fill me with all kinds of feelings and Christmassy feelings. I loved it. It was very good, especially the end. The 8th book I read in December, and the last book I read for the year, was #NotYourPrincess, Voices of Native American Women, edited by Lisa Charlieboy. And it was my favorite book of 2017. It got 5 stars. If I could give it 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 stars, I would. It was phenomenal. It's a mixed media book with several pieces from several different women who are Native American First Nation people. There's just an amazing, amazing selection of artwork and poetry and written word and photography, and it goes from completely abstract to completely not abstract, and it's also compiled really well so that there is like a narrative or a story through the larger works. It's weaving in between. The book is divided into 3 sections, and I really enjoyed how these sections used time. This idea that there's a past, a history that Native American women experience, and that the way they think about their history is not necessarily the way that we as white Americans think of their history, and that they should be able to tell their own stories. And that I found really interesting, empowering, and eye-opening. And then the second section of the book discusses the current situation for how Native American women experience their lives. It's hard and difficult at times to read. Anyone who knows anything about the Native American experience, I mean, it's not something that is going to be... I don't want to put words in people's mouths because I'm not Native and it's not my job and it's not my right to speak for them. But I will say that for me personally, I found it very difficult and very heartbreaking and very sad to read about some of the experiences in this book, but also extremely poignant and gut-wrenching and important and necessary to hear these stories. And then the third section of the book focuses on the future and where Native American women want to go. It infuses this whole book with a sense of hope and optimism that I found beautiful. There's no other word that I can think of. Beautiful. Inspiring, beautiful, profound, all those things. This book was all those things. I highly recommend it. I think it would be really great for everyone to be required to read, everyone especially who is an American to be required to read. It is poetry, it is artwork, so it's not going to be like a clear-cut narrative, but step outside your comfort zone, friends. Try it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So those were the books I read in December 2017. My favorite book of the year, my least favorite book of the year, the most books I ever read in a month for, since I've been on BookTube, and, so yeah, it was a good month. If you've read any of these books, or if you'd like to, or you have any comments or any questions, make sure to leave them down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys. Guys, I just went on a complete rant. Did I sip tea? Did I throw shade? Did I throw tea? I think I did all those things just now.